Coming up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon, police are looking to charge the Korean man who attacked US Ambassador Mark Lippert with attempted murder and assault against a foreign envoy. President Park Geun-hye holds summit talks with the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. The two countries agree to further expand their cooperation to the food and cultural industries. Plus, rival parties in Korea start discussions on raising the minimum wage. The government is expected to announce the largest ever hike in June. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
It's new Friday, March 6th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. We start with the latest developments following yesterday's appalling knife attack on the US ambassador to South Korea, Mark Lippert.
Now, prosecutors are seeking an arrest warrant to charge the attacker with attempted murder and even national security law.
This as they are also looking into whether the assault is related to his past pro-North Korea activities. Our Connie Kim has the details.
Prosecutors have filed an arrest warrant to charge a man who carried out a bloody knife attack on U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert with attempted murder, business obstruction, and violence against the foreign envoy. Police had said the attack was intentional, considering that the man, 55-year-old Kim Ki-jong, was equipped with the 10-inch knife he used in Thursday's attack. He had reportedly been planning the attack for 10 days. As he was being arrested after the assault, Kim voiced his opposition to ongoing military exercises between Korea and the U.S. and demanded they come to a halt. Police are focusing on Kim's pro-North Korea activities and are said to be considering charging him with violating the national security law, which bans support of North Korea. Kim traveled to North Korea 7 times from 1999 to 2007. He also attempted to set up a memorial in Seoul to the late North Korean leader Kim Jong-il upon his death 4 years ago. The attack on the U.S. ambassador was the first of its kind in Korea, and high-level officials from the government, a ruling party, and the presidential office of Cheongwade will meet Friday to discuss follow-up measures in the wake of the assault. Lippert is at a local hospital recovering from surgery he received after the attack to repair the injuries to his face and hand, and doctors say he can be discharged as early as next week. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And to carry out swift investigation into the case, prosecutors will set up a special probe team composed of some 20 to 30 investigators. We'll bring you more details on that in our later newscast. And as you'd expect, the attack on the U.S. ambassador made headlines across the world, including in the United States, where it immediately jumped to the top story as it broke.
Yes, U.S. media outlets have been focusing on the motive behind the bloody slashing. Reports have been centered on how the attacker strongly protested against the ongoing joint military drills between the U.S. and South Korea, linking the move with North Korea's similar stance to the exercises. The Washington Post led with North Korea's callous reaction to the incident and brought up the possibility of a return to extra heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula. CNN International also reported on how Pyongyang applauded the knife attack. Other news media pointed out the underswell of anti-American sentiment among certain sections of South Korean society.
The hard knife attack on Ambassador Lippert yesterday shook the nation and also sparked concerns about whether it will affect Seoul's relation with Washington.
But most experts in Washington and in Seoul say the US-Korea alliance will remain intact. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
South Korea and the United States have enjoyed an alliance that gets stronger by the day. And then this happened. A brutal knife attack on the U.S. ambassador to South Korea, Mark Lippert, by a South Korean man at an event in central Seoul. But most U.S.-based experts say the incident should not affect the alliance at the national level. Bruce Bennett, a senior defense analyst at the Rand Corporation, said the attack could actually strengthen Seoul-Washington alliance by giving even more justification on the need for their annual joint military exercises. Commenting on CNN, senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, Scott Snyder, said the incident will likely strengthen public support in South Korea for its alliance with the U.S. Former U.S. ambassadors to South Korea echo those views. Stephen Bosworth, who was in Seoul from 1997 to 2001, called the attack a very unfortunate incident, but said Korea-U.S. ties will remain intact. Donald Gregg, who served as the U.S. ambassador to Korea in the early 90s, said he was proud of Mark Lippert's brave reactions to such a horrid attack and added that it will actually serve to bolster bilateral relations. Analysts in Seoul also agree the attack will not hurt the alliance, as both governments view it as an unpredictable lone wolf attack by a crazed individual. But they do point out that while the relationship at the government level will be unharmed, the incident could take a toll on U.S. public sentiment about security in South Korea. 황성희, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye is nearing the end of her economic diplomacy tour of the Middle East. On Thursday, the Korean leader held talks with the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. They agreed to broaden their cooperation from energy and construction into the food and cultural sectors as well. Our Choi Sun, who is traveling with the president, followed this report from Abu Dhabi.
In a deal signed Thursday, Seoul and Abu Dhabi agreed to share halal food technologies and market and certification data. Halal foods are certified according to strict Islamic dietary guidelines, and its global market size is expected to hit $1.6 trillion in 2018. That's some 15% of the entire food and beverage market. Sealing this deal paves the way for Korea to develop its own halal-certified products, which it anticipates will double its current $700 million halal exports by 2017. Another deal on agricultural cooperation is expected to open the door for the UAE to bolster its agricultural and food industries, while also giving Korean companies the opportunity to make inroads into the region.
양국이 믿을 수 있는 인증 체계를 공동으로 구축하고 양국 식문화에 맞는 메뉴를 함께 개발한다면 전 세계 식품 산업을 선도해 나갈 수 있을 것입니다.
On the cultural front, the two sides will set up the Gulf region's first Korean Cultural Center in Abu Dhabi and push for joint development on cultural contents. This is in response to a growing Korean population in the UAE and the UAE's interest in Korean culture and language thanks to the popularity of Korean TV dramas and K-pop. Seoul and Abu Dhabi also agreed to upgrade their collaboration in healthcare, oil field development, and infrastructure. Forging a nuclear cooperation deal in 2009, the UAE became Korea's first strategic partner in the Gulf region. And President Park's office says the leaders of the two sides met 3 times in the past year alone, which goes to show how committed they are to the partnership. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News, Abu Dhabi.
During President Park's visit to Riyadh, Korea and Saudi Arabia inked a deal to export Korean-made small to mid-sized nuclear reactors to the Arab nation. Now, another type of Korean reactor has made it through a preliminary review by the U.S. nuclear regulator. And experts say chances are high that Korea will pass the final hurdle in a few years, which would open up vast export opportunities for local businesses. Sun Jung-in reports on the growing prospects of Korea's nuclear reactor technology around the world.
Korea has cleared the first hurdle in a process that could eventually allow it to export nuclear reactors to the United States and elsewhere, as Korea's blueprint for a 1,400-megawatt reactor has passed a preliminary inspection by the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The technology for the reactor, the Advanced Power Reactor 1400, is currently being applied to 4 reactors under construction in Korea and 4 in the United Arab Emirates. The U.S. Commission is the country's nuclear watchdog and functions much like the FDA for food and drug regulations.
The NRC is known for its strict nuclear safety regulations, which it strengthened last year. Korea is the first country to pass the new preliminary examination, raising hopes for the expansion of Korea's nuclear reactor business.
If Korea's nuclear power technology makes it through the final review, there will be a myriad of opportunities for competition with other strong countries in the business, like the US, Canada, France, and Russia. Korea has especially high expectations that it will be able to export its reactors to the US. The country uses 30% of the world's nuclear energy, but around 30 of its aging nuclear plants will have to be shut down in the next 10 to 20 years, meaning the demand for replacements will be high. Korea's state-run nuclear power agency says its goal is to get a final yes from the U.S. by 2019. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
It's been confirmed that a missing Korean-Canadian pastor is being held captive in North Korea. Reverend Im Hyun-soo's family says North Korea relayed the information to the Canadian government. A spokesperson for the family told CNN to ask Canadians and the international community to pray for his release and safe return home. The reason for Im's detainment still remains unclear. The 60-year-old entered North Korea via China at the end of January on a humanitarian mission and has been missing ever since. Im has been actively involved in aid missions to the north since the mid-1990s, helping with various food and education programs. A senior U.S. advisor says the U.S. Congress should encourage Japan to make efforts to heal ties with its neighbors that have deteriorated due to Tokyo's denials of its history. President and CEO of the Mansfield Foundation, Park Geun-hye, says that if the issues are not addressed, wounds from the past could imperil important future steps for the U.S.-Japan alliance, including the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the finalization of new alliance defense guidelines. Now, Geunhye, who described Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women as, quote, forced recruitment, pointed out that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been trying to minimize Tokyo's culpability. The US ambassador used the example of the Abe administration's decision to review the factual basis of the 1993 Kono Statement, which acknowledges Japan's atrocities during World War II.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo with
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about...
Lawmakers of rival parties in Korea have launched talks on increasing the nation's minimum wage. The parliamentary discussion follows the finance minister's comments earlier this week that a decent size hike is needed to give the economy a shot in the arm. However, there are concerns that a big jump in the minimum wage could put smaller firms or stores out of business. Kwon-soo explains.
5,200 Korean won, or a little more than $5 an hour, is the current minimum wage in Korea. The amount has risen steadily over the years, but many say it should be climbing faster. With around 3 months remaining for the government to decide on a minimum wage rise, politicians have begun talks on the issue. It's also expected to be on the table at a meeting Friday between senior officials from the presidential office of Cheongwade, the government, and the ruling Saenuri Party. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has embarked on talks too. It says a significant hike is desperately needed. Both rival parties seem to welcome Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan's remarks on the issue earlier this week.
Unless we raise the minimum wage, we have no chance of reviving the economy.
Choi said the government will encourage businesses to raise wages by an appropriate level to boost household income. But there are also opposing voices from employers and business associations. The Korea Employers Federation has recommended that companies refrain from raising hourly pay by more than 1.6%. Others have raised concerns that a hike to $6 or even $7 an hour could cause big problems for the nation's small firms. Kwon-soo, Arirang News.
The wearable market's global sales volume is expected to surpass 51 million devices this year, nearly 3 times that of last year. Germany-based GfK market research firm predicts the global wearable market will expand by 191% thanks to new competitors jumping into the race, seeking to grow their businesses with the latest tech innovations. The research firm predicts growth to be led by smartwatches, outstripping sales of health and fitness trackers. The report says sales of smartwatches are expected to grow by 6.5-fold this year compared to the last. Now, this growth is expected to be driven by developed regions like Western Europe and North America.
Now, as Samsung Electronics' vice chairman Lee Jae-yong takes charge of managing Samsung Group after his father Lee Geunhye fell ill last year, Korea's top conglomerate is transforming itself and embracing more of the younger generation. Hwang Ji-ae has the details.
The average age of Samsung Group's employees is dropping. The group says that 80% of its workers are in their 20s and 30s, while more than half of them were born in 1980 or later. Korea's top conglomerate expects the average age to drop even further as new recruits will start working by the end of the month. Looking at one of the group's affiliates, it's even easier to see how hard the conglomerate is trying to give itself new life. The average age of the group's biotech arm Samsung Bioepis is a little over 30, which is even lower than that of NCSoft, a high-profile Korean game company that began as a promising startup. Samsung Group's efforts to transform itself into a company that's fresh and innovative comes after Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Geunhye was hospitalized following a heart attack last May. Pundits say his son Tae-yong, poised to inherit leadership of the group, is at the center of the change. And it's not just the average age of employees that the Crown Prince is trying to give a twist. The group's communication methods are also changing to cater to the younger generation through the use of online and mobile content. Hwang Ji, Arirang News.
Now to the third and final part of our 3-part series looking at how the economic slowdown in China is affecting Korea. And today we're going to see how it's a mixed bag, really. Some local exporters are actually doing better than ever in China despite the downturn there. Our Shin Se-min reports.
Korea's #1 rice cooker manufacturer, Kuku Electronics, says its leading foreign customers are Chinese. The company's overall sales in China has grown 60% annually since 2013. Such demand even spurred Kuku to go public on Korea's main bourse last year.
Our premium strategy on Chinese consumers has worked out well. Our cooker caters to Chinese food and cooking culture, which has helped to bolster sales.
Kuku Electronics isn't alone. Korean-made consumer goods ranging from home appliances to beauty and fashion items are seeking to expand its presence in the Chinese market, a market that's rapidly growing in tandem with consumer demand. Despite growing success in the Chinese market, the total demand for consumer goods stands at a mere 4%, but for intermediate goods, it's well over 68%. It's a significant gap, but experts are hopeful that the Korean wave and improved income and living standards in China will help stoke local spending.
The Chinese government has been fostering consumption driven by economic development. This means its slowing growth rate won't significantly hurt Korean exporters.
Experts say Korean companies should invest more in marketing and branding their goods so they can keep up with the competition coming out of countries like Japan and France. And with the Korea-China Free Trade Agreement set to take effect next year, Korean exporters will have even more opportunities to make their mark, just like Kuku Electronics. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now to some great news for our viewers in Spain, as Arirang TV has signed a contents and production exchange deal with Spain's public network RTVE. Under the agreement, the two stations will exchange programs and news in case of a major breaking event or current affairs. The two-way content will be provided free of charge. One of the first projects is a jointly produced documentary about smart ICT convergence with Arirang filming in Spain and RTVE in Korea. That documentary will be aired on both channels later this year. Now, RTVE is Spain's largest broadcasting operator with 12 national TV and radio channels and 1 international TV channel.
Time to get a check of the global headlines for following this hour from Seoul. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news center.
Eunice, parts of the U.S. are being pounded at the moment by a monster snowstorm. It's closed schools and forced the cancellation of thousands of flights on the East Coast.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. The brutal cold spell continues even in March for those in the south and northeast U.S. And it is against this backdrop that a routine domestic flight turned into a frightening close call for passengers aboard a plane that skidded off a New York runway. Our Park Geun-hye has the story.
Delta Flight 1068 from Atlanta to New York's LaGuardia Airport skidded and veered off the runway as the plane was trying to land amid a snowstorm at about 11 a.m. Thursday local time. The plane went up an embankment and plowed through a fence, the only thing keeping from hitting the icy waters of Flushing Bay.
The aircraft was carrying 127 passengers and 5 crew members. Happily, there are only minor injuries that have been reported.
Everyone on board the domestic flight was safely evacuated, and at least 2 of the 24 people injured were taken to a local hospital.
It wasn't really that bad, but it was pretty scary, and I'm just thankful that we didn't go into the water.
The airport was shut down temporarily following the accident. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board has begun investigating the cause of the accident. This accident happened amid a fierce snowstorm that affected New England through northeastern Texas. The monster snowstorm paralyzed the region, affecting some 94 million people, with more than 4,500 flights canceled on Thursday. Schools were closed, as were government offices and transportation services in some states. Park Geun-hye, Arirang News.
And turning to some business news now, the European Central Bank has announced it will launch its long-awaited €1 trillion stimulus program come Monday. From Cyprus, ECB President Mario Draghi expressed confidence in an improving European economy as the central bank upgraded its GDP growth projection by half a percentage point to 1.5% this year. Draghi announced the quantitative easing program will purchase €60 billion per month through September of next year, or until inflation reaches closer to its target of 2%. In reaction, European and U.S. bonds ended up on Thursday. The euro, meanwhile, fell to an 11.5-year low against the greenback before settling slightly higher above $1.10. And finally, Iraqi forces fighting alongside Iranian generals continue to struggle to surround the strategic city of Tikrit as they maneuver around roadside bombs and booby traps installed by IS militants defending Saddam Hussein's hometown. Military sources say the extremists have also tried to obstruct a helicopter attack by setting fire to oil wells northeast of Tikrit. Meanwhile, the United Nations says the number of refugees fleeing the fighting has grown to 28,000, many of them heading to the city of Samarra, while other families were left stranded at checkpoints. Relief supplies are on their way to the region to assist the displaced.
Well, it's Gyeongchip today, the third solar term on the East Asian lunisolar calendar, and it signifies the awakening of hibernating insects and frogs by the warm spring weather. And things are really warming up today. The chilly morning is turning into a mild afternoon, hovering near and above 10 degrees across the nation. And a fair amount of sunshine will dominate the whole peninsula, finally making it feel more like spring this afternoon. So the daytime high high here in the capital will rise to 9, while Daegu and Gwangju peak at 11 and 12, and Busan will top out at 10 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 10 and 11, and Dokdo rises to 5. Now, the temperature readings will be even warmer for the upcoming weekend, but be prepared for the big temperature differences between day and nighttime and dress accordingly. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Join us again at the same time on Monday. Have a great weekend.